John, you covered the shooting when it happened.
Yeah, it's one of those stories you will never forget covering. We were on the air for hours that morning, and we started getting word from some of our insiders telling us that there were people dead inside this nightclub. Our sources were saying the number may be high. But when Mayor Buddy Dyer held the press conference later on in the morning, and then he said there were nearly 50 people dead inside, we were all at a loss for words. It's a moment that many of us will never forget. So this was a week full of big wins, big crashes, which you just saw, and big-time VIPs right here in Daytona. Now, as you see behind us, race fans starting to clear out and make their way home after, a dozen hours at the track today. One team standing on top of the racing world for this back-to-back win. Okay, so what's interesting here is behind us, and we can see the parking lot right there. It's not very full, and that may have been done by design. I think, the wait times in the weeks leading up to it were maybe longer than what we saw today. But as we told you yesterday, when they opened Universal Studios back in 1990, they had a lot of rides that weren't working, huge lines, and so it wasn't, I guess, the best experience for a lot of people. So I'm guessing this is probably done by design, get a lot of good press, which they are, and make sure this first day is good. And from all intents and purposes, it sounds like it has been good, and we'll probably just see it building throughout the week with more and more people there. But I also drove by some of the other parks today. I was all over the Disney property, so I'll talk more about that coming up at 5:30. Welcome to our Fox 35 special, Christmas in Central Florida. As you've likely heard by now, Orlando is the #1 travel destination in the world when it comes to the holidays. And it makes sense. Well, it is Military Appreciation Month here on Fox. Thousands of service members are currently living with a disability, which they sustained while serving our country. And there's an organization where their sole task is dedicated to helping these veterans with housing as a way of saying thank you for the sacrifice. Well, today, Homes for Our Troops is in Orlando, making sure that more of our heroes get a home that they deserve. Well, NASCAR is a small community of people. They all know each other because they travel together for more than half of the year. And tonight, we caught up with a NASCAR legend, Kenny Wallace, who gives us some insight into the man that Greg Biffle was, and then Kenny's personal connection to this crash. Kenny, great to see you. Sorry it's under these circumstances, but you've been around the sport for a long time, so I know you know Greg Biffle. Tell us a little bit about him. But I want to talk about your daughter who passed away, because you touched my heart so much when we were playing. Your story about how you remember her and what it's like, because as an NFL player, sometimes you think you're untouchable, and then it brings you to your knees. I got 2 girls, you know that. How do you get through? How do you get through something like that?
Well, I'll tell you what, it really brought our family together.
And I think the thing that stood out to me the most is in our mind, when we think of situations like this, you imagine vast spaces. And when you get inside and you think about 300 people inside that club, it's a very small club. And that's what stuck out to me maybe the most was everything happened right in front of everybody. And it just gives you a better perspective of where the shooter came in, the dance floor where he first started shooting, which now is gone. That was one of the first things that you noticed, is the dance floor is gone. And they said, she said, the investigators picked it up, right?
Yeah, FBI has the dance floor.
And so, they took that up. But then when you hear stories of the shooter went from this room to this room to the bathroom, it's all right there. Yeah. So it isn't like in your mind how it was all right there. And then seeing where everybody holed up, the few places you could, it puts it in perspective that truly was a night of terror for all 300 people inside there.
Yeah.
Here we were, the vacation capital of the world, and we were witnessing, at that time, the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. One counselor we had said something that stuck with me for a long time. Says, yes, it was a tragedy, but we had to keep in mind that it was the work of one evil person and not a reflection of our community. And then we saw the best in our community right after that, and in the weeks and years to come. So that's what we saw, people helping people. It was the worst night in Orlando history that truly brought out the best in our community. But for the victims and their families, it can still be hard to move on. And that's why they're coming here to the site today to try and get some closure. All of a sudden, this is right in the middle of everything, and they need the infrastructure. And wow, Luann, it's all here now, and it's a different area.
Yeah, and John, that is such a huge piece of property that Epic is sitting on. What used to be there?
Well, okay, it's a really interesting story there, because also, like right over my right shoulder, that's where Lockheed Martin is. This was their test range, and that soil was contaminated. So it took a lot of work to remediate that. That's why nothing was ever there. And so it took a long time to get the soil and to get permission to actually build there. So Luann, you're talking about a massive piece of property, but again, they're barely touching it. Kind of like the Disney situation. The theme parks are this, their land is like that. That's the same situation they have here. There's a lot of room to grow, Luann.
Absolutely.